Firstly, for me, depression started when I was very young. I was about 12, 11 or 12. And also at that time, there was no emotional vocabulary also. You know, even depression wasn't really being talked about at that time when I was growing up. The internet wasn't where it was, so I didn't have a lot of information on it. I didn't really know what I was going through. So growing up, I was just like, oh, I'm an odd kid. There's something wrong with me. Why am I sad all the time? Why is everybody happy and why am I sad? Wondered why things were easier for other people than they were for me. I think for me, it was just a feeling of isolation that I had from everybody around me. I just felt isolated. Everybody could see that something was happening because, you know, I was a teenager. I was not very happy. I was locking myself up in my room a lot. It's there when somebody is not emotionally doing very well. It's a palpable thing. It happens. The primary sticking points with this conversation is the fact that you have so much. Despite having so much, how can you feel the way that you do? Once I started going to therapy, and once I realized what was happening was depression, then it was just something that we all collectively kind of learned about together. Just because I've accepted that I'm somebody who deals with depression, it doesn't mean the times that I have depression now suddenly feel great. It doesn't feel great still.
I want to know, how did you and Bhatt Saab and Soni ma'am react when you saw her as the bride?
Listen, I don't know because I couldn't see because I just had tears in my eyes. I couldn't see anything. I had said that to Alia. I was like, you've you know, both of us are very similar. You've chosen somebody who's giving you the same kind of quietness.
People sometimes shit on you for no reason, okay? Just for the backing that you have, and that has happened with Alia all the time.
She doesn't need help in that sense because I think, you know, we're all very well aware of the fact that we're very lucky, we're very privileged. She knows who she is, we all know who we are, and there's a certain amount of noise that does not penetrate.
She has rather been elusive from the media, but her strong and powerful voice has made you love her, respect her. Today, Shaheen Bhatt joins me for a conversation only on Bollywood Bubble. Thank you so much for doing this. I have wanted to do this for quite some time, and your sister knows it, but never really worked towards it, Alia. I don't know why. But, you know, Shaheen, the first time I actually got to know you a little bit as a person, because we've never really spoken, but from a third person's perspective, is when you had come out and spoken about your struggle, right? And when you had come out and spoken about your battle with mental health. Because at that point, abhi to bahut log baat karte hain. Tab koi baat nahi karna chahta tha. And for you to come out and speak about it, in the beginning, I want to ask you, start off by asking this, that in the beginning, did it become difficult for you to come to terms with the fact that you were actually battling something?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think, you know, at the time, firstly, for me, depression started when I was very young. I was about 12, 11 or 12. And also at that time, there was no emotional vocabulary also. You know, even depression wasn't really being talked about at that time when I was growing up. The internet wasn't where it was, so I didn't have a lot of information on it. I didn't really know what I was going through. So growing up, I was just like, oh, I'm an odd kid. There's something wrong with me. Why am I sad all the time? Why is everybody happy and why am I sad? So I didn't really know what was happening to me. And, you know, I think as, you know, the stigma around mental health is very pervasive. And for me to come to terms with the fact that the label of depression was given to me, it took some time, it took some acceptance, because I also had I had a negative association with that word, which has now completely changed. Now, if people associate that word with me, I actually feel very good. I feel very happy because I feel like it's given me a lot to be able to talk about it. It's given me a lot, you know, I've met a lot of wonderful people. I've had a lot of wonderful conversations. I'm sitting here having this conversation with you because I've talked about it.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, it took some time, but I think, you know, I think I've really reached a point of true acceptance with the fact that this is something that is a part of my life.
But growing up, what kind of a kid were you? Like, were you good with studies? Did you have that pressure to study, get marks? Because, you know, I come from Calcutta. Even till date, the pressure to be academically very sound. Like, honestly, I'm not creating a wrong example, but I was a good student. I was a great student, actually. I was just telling my friend. But I just don't feel that in the field that I'm working, वो marks का कोई किसी ने कभी पूछा भी. मतलब किसी ने कभी मुझसे ये भी नहीं पूछा कि अच्छा मतलब if I tell them that I was a science student and I studied, I used to be a studious science kid, I was going to become a doctor, they'll be like, what? Because they can't associate the fact that a person who studied well could also do arts, you know. We have those kind of social conditioning. Did you grow up to hear any of that around you?
I mean, look, I was first of all, I have to acknowledge the fact that I come from a great amount of privilege. So,
True.
I wasn't academically inclined, but I was lucky that it didn't matter. It didn't really affect my life. It wasn't going to affect my life that negatively if I did badly in school. For a lot of people, that's not the case. You have to understand why people value education so highly is because for a lot of people, it's the difference between, your life being this way or that way. So I want to acknowledge the fact that I come from that privilege first, but I was never a good student for a myriad of reasons. One of them also definitely being the fact that, mental health is something that I struggled with as a child. And I didn't want to do anything, I didn't want to do anything that was academic, so it didn't really matter. But the pressure was still there. Even though I was raised in an environment where my parents were very supportive, they made it a huge point to value the effort and the attempt rather than the outcome. Even though I had that support, it's an internal thing, right? And you're with other kids in class, that sense of competition does exist. So I wanted to do well. I wanted to do my best, and somehow it just didn't happen. And what I realize now is it's because I didn't respond to a certain type of learning or a certain type of education. I'm not an unintelligent person.
Absolutely, academics and intelligence are two different.
They're not correlated. So, and I think we make the mistake of correlating that. We think if I don't do well at this, I'm not smart, or I'm not intelligent, or I'm not good, which is absolutely not true.
It is hogwash.
Yes.
Because I'm sorry, but in my school, I was never the topper. I used to study really, really well. But the person who actually scored 99 maybe, I don't even know where they are. Like, it's basically like that. Like, bachpan mein wo bola jata hai na. I have a brother, okay? I have an elder brother who's 10 years older than me. You and Alia also have an age gap in between the two of you. What happens is, even I come from a family where we have never been pitted against each other. A lot of those the trauma starts from the fact that you are often compared and pitted against people, whether it's your friends, it's your schoolmates, it's your own family members, relatives sometimes doing it. Did you face any of that?
No, not at all. I mean, I think I definitely had moments where I wondered why things were easier for other people than they were for me. And that's just because, like I said, I had mental health stuff that I was dealing with, which maybe other people were not dealing with. But there was definitely no sense of that internal competition. There was no sense of, I didn't feel like I had to be that, I was...
No, of course, but did anybody ever pit you? We don't want to be compared. Nobody wants it, whether you're good or bad at it.
No, I don't think so. I think I was quite lucky. Like I said, that dynamic existed more in my school environment and my classroom environment and my college environment. But I mean, at home, that was definitely not a thing.
But when you say that you have been battling this since you were 12, in the beginning, even kids don't really realize that. Kids your age that time wouldn't even know what you're going through. They are not even having the bandwidth to understand or empathize with you. Did you face a lot of bullying in school because of that?
Thankfully not. I think I was very lucky. The school that I went to, I was very lucky in the school that I went to. I had a lot of good friends in school. Thankfully, bullying is not something that I dealt with. I think for me, it was just a feeling of isolation that I had from everybody around me. I just felt isolated. Because especially when you're feeling a certain way, it's very hard. Even though if you have resources, it's hard to tap into them.
Yeah.
So you can have 10 people to talk to, but when you're feeling a certain way, to talk to them is the hard thing to do. So I think the primary feeling for me was a feeling of just isolation.
One thing that has become a great move today is that initially there would be nobody in influential positions coming and addressing the issue, right? Then there were you, there was Deepika Padukone, then there was Anushka Sharma, I think Shraddha Kapoor came and spoke about battling anxiety, and many others. And then people started realizing that it's not really limited to people without privilege or who come from a place with no financial or emotional instability. It can happen to anybody. That is something that it changed something. Even if there are trolls who will question the people on moral grounds, but I just feel that that's something did change. Did you notice that around the time when you came out and spoke?
I mean, definitely, I think, the last couple of years, a lot of the attitudes around mental health have steadily changed in general. Yeah. I think the weird silver lining of COVID was the fact that everybody during COVID and during lockdown was going through something, and everybody was experiencing something that they probably hadn't experienced before. So the weird silver lining of that was that mental health just became, for a lot of people, became a more tangible thing. You understood what it was a lot more. We were talking about it a lot more. So I think attitudes are starting to change. I think we're still a long way away.
Yeah, long.
Because I think fundamentally, as human beings, we defend against vulnerability of any kind. We don't like it. We don't like to feel vulnerable. We don't like to feel open. And in talking about mental health openly, there has to be a bit of vulnerability. So we're getting there. It'll just take some time.
No, also it's sad that even when people come out and speak about what they are going through, we somehow equate their experiences to where they are in their lives. Like the most successful person can also feel the same kind of emotions. Like you cannot limit that, right? You get those thoughts. Like I could do really well in life, but there are days when I feel really, really down. And if people come and tell me, people disregard it, that, oh, how can you have it because you come from this place, or you have this ready, or you're doing so well in your life, or you're married, how can you? So these are all stereotypes, right? Have you dealt with that when you started speaking about it in the beginning, because you come from a family?
No, absolutely. I think one of the primary sticking points with this conversation is the fact that you have so much. Despite having so much, how can you feel the way that you do? I don't deny the fact that I have a lot. I think the fact that I'm in the position that I'm in, it gives me access to the best care, it gives me access to the best resources, and I'm extremely lucky. Despite that, I still feel like this. So imagine if me, despite having access to all those resources, I still feel this way. Imagine for people who don't have access, what they feel like. So I don't think, the way that I feel, my pain, my all the strife is not given to me by my lifestyle. It's not taken away by my lifestyle. It's just something that we all have to deal with. I have a mind like everybody else. It is prone to the same ups and downs of sadness and happiness as everybody else. So my life in that sense has nothing to do with it.
It's so beautiful because recently I did an interview with Sushmita Sen, and I was just watching the interview because I was cutting out few parts to put it out. And she's such a gorgeous lady, and she speaks so like from the heart. She said that the solution to any problem actually begins with acceptance.
Yeah.
Right? So first of all, you accepted it. Then you had your loved ones accepting the fact that you are going through something. That is definitely a privilege, But I want to say that when you were breaking the news to your family, how did you do it? And what actually convinced you that this is the right time for me to come out and speak to them about it?
I mean, there was no breaking the news as such, because everybody could see that something was happening, because I was a teenager. I was not very happy. I was locking myself up in my room a lot. It's there when somebody is not emotionally doing very well. It's a palpable thing. It happens. You might not know exactly what's happening. You might not know exactly why it's happening, but there's a sense that somebody is not feeling the best that they can feel. So I think more than anything, it was just a conversation about, once I started going to therapy, and once I realized what was happening was depression, then it was just something that we all collectively kind of learned about together.
This is how old were you?
I was 18 when this happened. So
but for 6 years you had to deal with it internally.
Yeah, because I didn't know what it was, right? I just didn't know what it was. I was just like, oh, I'm weird. I'm different. That's what I thought. I just thought I'm just a weird, different kid. I didn't realize what it was. And so once I got the diagnosis, then it was just about, okay, now this is just something that we all have to kind of figure out what it is together.
Why I always wanted to speak to you about is, so I come from a place where I possibly have the privilege of a really, really supportive family. They will stand by any choice that I make, unless and until it's something that is disrespectful. So I have seen my father really battle health issues when I was 6 years old. Like there has been a time when my father has gone to a hospital on a Saturday because he had a heart attack. Came back on a Tuesday, and Thursday he had to go back because he had another heart attack and his pulse had gone down to 29. I was just 6. So I've grown up with that fear of losing them, and COVID was the time when I realized that I've become really, really unkind. I just felt like my father has been the coolest dad and I've been the strictest child to him because of my own insecurities and my own fear of losing them. And slowly as I grew up, I realized that I have always had anxiety related to losing my parents, losing my loved ones, to the extent that I can't visit people in hospitals, to the extent that I run away from the idea of grief and death. And it's very internal because, again, it's a mental health issue. People only think depression and PTSD are the things, but there's so much more. Why I said this is because it took me a lot of time to accept it, because you don't realize it.
Yeah. You don't know it's there.
For 6 years, you did that. How did you fight it internally? Were there days when you felt like breaking down and you couldn't, because you couldn't do it in front of people who you loved and cared for?
Yeah, I mean, so 6 years also, I mean, the thing to note about depression is it's not a linear thing. It's not every single day for 6 years was a bad day.
Yeah.
It's not like that. Even now, it's not like that. It's not like every day is a bad day for me. I have a graph. I go up and I go down.
Yeah.
Some weeks are bad. Some days are amazing. Some months are amazing. And it was a similar thing at that time.
Yeah.
But it was just a fair amount of time where I didn't feel good.
Yeah.
And I felt bad. And I felt, and I couldn't understand why. And I felt so bad and I couldn't understand why. So it was, I don't know, I feel like internally you just figure out survival mechanism. Your survival mechanism kicks in, right? You just, you do figure out how to kind of get through it. It was really, really difficult. And eventually, that is what taught me to get help and actually go talk to a therapist and talk to somebody.
Recently, I went through something which was really, really cathartic for me in a different way emotionally. And I couldn't come to terms with it. And it was really, really difficult because I thought that I'm strong enough to deal with a lot of things. But I then realized that maybe I'm not, because for 4 months, my mom was staying with me. So I felt like, okay, the pain was very, very subdued because it was hidden. And it was like, okay, malham lag raha hai, automatic, because I know my mother is in the other room. And the moment she left, I just felt this void where I feel today also, I'll be honest. If there's a day when I don't have work, I really feel upset. I really feel, I don't know why, but I really feel like I need at least somebody to just sit next to me and just talk to me. Like, I don't like the idea of being alone. Have you been through that? Because in the book also you've spoken about moments where you've gone through heartbreak, when you've dealt with it all alone. This is after you had accepted yourself. Was that a difficult phase in your life that time? When you were already accepted, you knew, and then having to put up a defense.
Yeah, I mean, it's still hard. I mean, just because I've accepted that I'm somebody who deals with depression, it doesn't mean the times that I have depression now suddenly feel great. It doesn't feel great still. It's still something that I have to deal with, and it's still something that when I'm having a bad day, it's unpleasant. Yeah, who wants to feel bad? You don't want to. You just don't want to be.
True.
Everybody strives to feel as good as they can. So it's still difficult, but I think the difference is now that I deal with it in a completely different way. The way that I've not had a bad day the way that I used to have, in years. It's there. It's changed because I've learned how to deal with it better. I've learned how to cope with it better. Yeah, it still sucks. Who wants to feel bad?
But does the defense change you in a way where you don't feel like loving the way you actually loved before?
What do you mean?
Like, does a heartbreak make you feel like I don't want to love or be so involved as I was emotionally?
No, yeah, I embrace vulnerability as much as possible. So I think you keep throwing yourself at things and into things with the same kind of abandon as always, because I mean, what else is life?
Yeah,
that's what it is.
One thing that is amazing about the family is that you guys have been people sometimes shit on you for no reason, okay, just for the backing that you have, and that has happened with Alia all the time. I've seen that, and I see her putting up a guard and putting up that brave face all the time, and eventually she's also human, she also gets affected, but they are in a position that where you can't even react, right? Do you help her in such situations where, because you are the strongest support that she always has, and you've been through so much, there are difficult times of course in her life also, do you side with her and tell her how to deal with it, or do you?
I honestly think she doesn't need help in that sense, because I think we're all very well aware of the fact that we're very lucky, we're very privileged, we're in a wonderful position. We have we're just very lucky, and I think the things that happen outside of that, if you're in the public eye, I think it comes with a certain understanding that if you're in the public eye, the public is going to talk about you. There are things that are going to be said about you. and past a certain point, that's okay. That's part of the job. She knows who she is. We all know who we are. And there's a certain amount of noise that does not penetrate. So I think it's just about being really, really grateful for all that we have and the fact that we have each other, and we definitely have conversations about the things that we're feeling, but that outside noise doesn't really factor in.
Do you miss staying with her now? Because
of course I miss it, but I spend a lot of time with her. I spend a lot of time, as much time as I possibly can, with my family. We make it a point to do that. So I definitely miss it, but I think that we're making up for it.
Finally, she has said in an interview that when she was getting married, she could see like Ranbir having a tear in his eyes. I want to know, how did you and Bhatt Saab and Soni ma'am react when you saw her as the bride?
Listen, I don't know, because I couldn't see, because I just had tears in my eyes. I couldn't see anything. So it was, for me, it was a really overwhelming and emotional moment. And it was a beautiful moment. But yeah, I actually have no idea how anybody else was dealing with it, because I was so overawed by myself.
Having Ranbir as a family member today, you've seen their relationship in front of you, and they're such a balanced couple, to be very honest. How does it change things? Like, how does the dynamics change? Are you put in situations where you have to like pick sides? No?
Not at all. It doesn't change anything. It's just a wonderful addition to the family. It changes nothing. We just have somebody else to partake in all the shenanigans that we get up to. That's all.
But he's very similar to you when it comes to like the cerebral part of it. I think he's
I had said that to Alia. I was like, both of us are very similar. You've chosen somebody who's giving you the same kind of quietness.
But thank you, Shaheen. I feel that it's very important to raise a voice in today's world if you have that power and privilege, because only when you raise a voice, maybe it will give power to all those people who feel voiceless or are made to feel voiceless for whatever they're going through. And I hope that we have a longer conversation on this. Just keep doing you, because you're amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shaheen, and you're watching us on Bollywood Bubble.